Sometimes at Disney, a century only lasts for 50 years. In 1994, the All-Star Sports Resort opened as the first value resort at Walt Disney World. All-Star Music and Movies opened not long after in late 1994 and 1999. These were somewhat controversial. They were essentially simple, low-scale hotels just like you would find for $30 a night along 192. The only real difference between the All-Stars and an Econolodge was some decorations slapped on the side, large statues in the courtyards, and the high standards of Disney housekeeping. But even with these bonuses, more traditional Disney fans didn't approve of lowering the high standards for Disney resorts set by the likes of the Polynesian or Grand Floridian. They saw the All-Star resorts as tacky and cheap-looking. Others liked how they didn't just look cheap, they actually were cheap. A fraction of the price, which made the experience of staying in a Disney hotel significantly more accessible. Plus, what some called tacky, others called fun, bright, and colorful. The All-Star resorts were very popular, leading to Disney wanting a new value hotel. So work began on the Pop Sanctuary Resort. Each grouping of buildings would be themed to a different decade of pop culture in the 1900s. Much like the All-Star resorts, Pop Sanctuary is planned to be standard, cheap hotel buildings, but with added decorations. The resort would be divided into two halves, separated by Hourglass Lake and connected by the Generation Gap Bridge. The first half was set to open in 2002 and will be called the Classic Years, themed to the decades between 1950 and 1999. The second half was expected to open about a year or two later and would be called the Legendary Years, covering the first half of the 20th century. You would think that since classic implies old, then the classic years would be the older decades and not the half a century that just ended, but whatever. The confusingly named classic years were on track to open in 2002, as long as no tragic event altering the course of American history forever while also tanking the economy and tourism industry happened in the fall of 2001, then everything would go as planned. Oh right, 9/11. Well, that changed everything. Phase 1 did open, and with only a year delay in 2003. It had jukeboxes for the 50s, Flower Power for the 60s, Big Wheels for the 70s, Roger Rabbit for the 80s, and laptops for the 90s. It was a great evolution of the value resort format set up by the All-Stars while still having its own unique charm. Perhaps the most interesting feature was the view across the lake of the abandoned half-finished second phase of the resort. Despite being partially constructed and even near completion in some parts, the legendary years of Pop Sanctuary never opened. If Disney fans complained that giant statues were a bit tacky, you can bet they were not happy about this being in guest view for years. It took almost a decade for any real progress to happen on completing Pop Sanctuary, but in 2012 the second half did open. Kind of. Instead of the Pop Sanctuary theme, Phase 2 was built with an animation theme. Each cluster of buildings was dedicated to a different Disney or Pixar film, and while still a value resort, the price was raised as well as the quality. It was still simple, but the new Art of Animation resort featured more fully realized and detailed environments compared to the All-Stars and Pop Sanctuary, as well as nicer rooms with the focus on family suites. The newest value resort was a huge success, but the legendary years were abandoned forever, leaving Pop Sanctuary permanently as just a 50-year sanctuary, because, you know, words have no meaning. Thank you all for watching, I hope you learned something new here. If you did, let me know in the comments. If you knew all of this already, pretend I taught you something new in the comments. Otherwise, my very fragile ego will be hurt, and I am incredibly sensitive, and I will likely cry if you don't like, comment, and subscribe.